video, I'm going to introduce the concept of solving absolute value equations. The idea behind this is you need to first of all understand kind of the definition of absolute value. So if I have the absolute value of some number like 7, I know that absolute value is defined as mathematically the distance a number is from 0 on a number line. How far away is 7 from 0? Well, if I were to make a number line, obviously this is not difficult. There's 0, there's 7, and wow, it's 7 units away. So the answer to the absolute value of 7 is 7. Well, what about the absolute value of negative 7? Well, negative 7 is sitting back here in this spot, and it is also 7 away. So the answer to these, you'll notice, is both 7. The way I remember absolute values is I usually think of the absolute value bars, these bars right here, as being shower curtains. And anytime a number goes into the shower, it always comes out clean. You could start with a clean 7 and it turns into a clean 7. You could start with a dirty 7, it takes a shower and it comes out clean. Your answers to the absolute values of single numbers like this are always positive because there's no such thing as a negative distance. If you were to take out a tape measure or a ruler, there's no negative numbers measuring any distances. So that's a pretty common idea. So then you'll have situations where, small little problems like this. If I put x in the shower, or if I put x in the absolute value bars, and I know that it's coming out at 7, then what numbers could have gone in there? Well, it could have been a 7 in there, because we know that, or it could have been a negative 7. So the answers look like this. 7 or negative 7 would be our two solutions to that question. Another concept or another fundamental thing to think about is, what about if you had the absolute value of equaling negative 7? So when is the absolute value going to be a negative 7? Well, get a question like this, that's kind of a gimme or a freebie. The answer to that would be no solution. There is no answer to that question because there's no way you're going to get the absolute value of some plain old number equaling a negative. Now what I'd like to do is do a little build up here to show you kind of how these questions are answered. I'm going to start with a simple one. So I'm going to start with something as simple as the absolute value of 8. And then I'm going to have you, after I explain a couple of these, I'm going to have you pause the video and try them. But just to kind of walk through these, when you see them, now these, when they're just a plain x in here, they're pretty straightforward. Absolute value of x is 8. Well, I know that x equals 8 or negative 8 because either one of those could have gone in here into the absolute value bars and come out like that. So the idea would be your answer is negative 8. If you're asked to put them on a number line, then all you got to do is put the two dots like that. It is nice to mark where 0 is or some kind of a middle number so we have an idea of what your number line looks like. Next, what if you have a number outside the absolute value bars and then an absolute value equaling a number? Well, you want to get rid of that number because you want to divide both sides by 2 because it's a lot like just having 2x equals 8. Our first move is divide by 2. We want to isolate the variable. We want to get this by itself. We want to isolate the absolute value bars. That's the most important part of this. Divide by 2, those are gone. And now the question really was, when does the absolute value of x equals 4? We've talked about this enough. You should know that that's 4 and negative 4. Not a big deal. Okay, let's getting more difficult here. Now we have two items inside the absolute value bars. We haven't had that yet. Well, this is the situation where we need to learn a new strategy because we don't just have a plain x in there anymore. We can't just say the answer is 8 and negative 8. We have 2x in there. So there's this process of you need to split this into two equations. This 2x, where I'm covering this up, could have been 8 or negative 8. So this 2x could have been 8. If I put a big 8 right here, it would come out as 8. Or the 2x could have been negative 8. If I put a negative 8 right here, it would come out as 8. So you have to understand that when you have absolute value questions, there's two answers. Well, the way to get the two answers when you have everything inside the absolute value bars is to split it into two equations and solve. So what you do then, you say, okay, well, this could have been 8. Boom. This could have been negative 8 and put it over here. So you just make the positive and negative versions of this and set your whatever's on the inside equal to it. And then solve those two small equations. So divide both sides by 2 and x equals 4 here. Divide both sides by 2 and x equals negative 4 here. So those are my two answers. Now they are easy to check. Don't be lazy. You can take these answers and plug them right there. What's 2 times 4? That's 8. Absolute value of 8 is 8. I put the negative 4 in there. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Absolute value is 8. You can check those on your calculator or in your head. Okay, let's keep going. Let's get the next level. The next level of difficulty would be not only do we have 2x, but now we have another number in there. You guys, it's going to be two answers. So you split it into two. You say this 2x plus 10 part of it could have equaled 8, or the 2x plus 10 part of it could have equaled negative 8. All of this absolute valued has to be 8. The only choices are this has to equal 8 or negative 8. So you split it up. And then you just solve these two little baby equations, subtract 10 on both sides. 2x equals 8, take away 10 is negative 2, divide by 2, and x equals negative 1. Or I minus 10 minus 10, 2x equals negative 18, divide by 2, and x equals negative 9. So x could have been negative 1 or negative 9. Again, don't be lazy. Take the negative 1, put it there. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 10 is 8. Absolute value of 8 is 8. Works. Take negative 9, put it in there. That would give me negative 18. And negative 18 plus 10 is negative 8. The absolute value of it is 8. Now, I've worked through a bunch of sample problems. Now it's your turn. So what I'd like you to do is write these two equations down at this point in your notebooks and pause the video. Copy them down, pause the video, and then I'm going to show the answers. So pause the video now. Okay, welcome back. Here are the two solutions. The two solutions are, the first one, you would get this because you would split it into 2. And when you split it into 2, you end up getting equaling 9 or negative 9. And then you go through the process to solve it, and x equals negative 7 or negative 1. On the second example is right here, and here are the two solutions. When you split it up into 2, it equals 11 or negative 11. You subtract 5 on both sides, divide, and solve, and you get x equals negative 3 or x equals 8. I'm hoping that most of you got those correct and are feeling pretty good about solving absolute value equations. The last thing that I want to talk about is what happens if they get super complicated. Ooh, scary. What if it looks like this, where you have components, or you have numbers, I should say, in all the possible spots. We have multiple numbers in the absolute value. We have numbers on the outside, another number on the outside, and equaling. Okay, here's the idea. The idea is you can't split this problem into 2 until you have the absolute value bars all by themselves. We need to get these bars all by themselves, and then we can split them into 2. That's a main concept. So just watch. First thing I'm going to do, because if I had a problem like this, if I had 4x plus 12 equals 20, if I had a simple problem like that, I know I would subtract 12 and divide by 4. You get rid of what's added and subtracted first. So look at this. We got to get rid of what's added and subtracted first. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides. Then I've got 4 times the absolute value of 2x minus 6 equals 20. Divide both sides by 4 now to get rid of this 4, because this is 4 times the absolute value bars. The absolute value bars are kind of like parentheses. Those 4's cancel. I've got the absolute value of 2x minus 6 equals 5. Now I can split it into 2, because now I have the absolute value bars all alone, and so then 2x minus 6 had to equal 5, or 2x minus 6 had to equal negative 5, and I can solve those two little equations now at that point. And then what I'm going to get when I work those out to solve them is I'm going to end up adding 6 to both sides, so 2x equals 11, divide by 2, and x equals 5.5. And then on this one, I can add 6 to both sides, and I get 2x equals 1, divide by 2, and x equals 1/2 or 0.5. Now you can take 5.5 and 0.5, both of those answers, you can plug them into here, work this out, get the absolute value, take it times 4 minus 12, and you're going to get 8. Okay, it's not difficult to check. You can just plug them back in with substitution. All right, that's when you have things in every spot. Get those absolute value bars alone first. All right, the last problem I want to talk about real quickly is what happens if they put the adding or subtracting number here. The most common mistake students make is they do 12 minus 2 right away and they put a 10 there. No, because this is being multiplied right here. It's 2 times this absolute value portion. Do not turn this into a 10. Get rid of this 12 right away. Subtract 12 on both sides, and then negative 2 is timesing by this absolute value part. And then now you can divide by negative 2. And that's a good thing we're dividing, because then it's now going to turn it. Now I've got the absolute value bars all alone, and that would be 2. Turned it in from a negative to a positive is what I was going to say there. And now I've got that, and then that I can split into 2, which we've done a bunch of those already, so that should look familiar to you, and you should be able to fly through this part pretty quickly. There's the positive version, there's the negative version. Subtract 4, 2x equals negative 2, divide by 2, and x equals negative 1. And then over here, subtract 4, 2x equals negative 6, divide by 2, and x equals negative 3. And then you can plug those back in the original, and they will turn out to be 8. So we started this process by just defining the absolute value as being the distance a number is from 0, and then we went through and we solved a bunch of problems, and you should know how to do any kind of these with your absolute values.